And we're live. Another episode of The Oddest Couple. I'm Felix Levine. Across from me is John A-Light, the cheeky little glasses. And we're very excited for another episode here today. Quick reminders as per usual. You can see our Legacy 11 vodka here in front of John. It is 11 times distilled, 11 times filtered, sugar-free and gluten-free.
And drank by me 11 times.
Right before this episode. So we're big fans of the Legacy 11 vodka. If you want to purchase it, go to the link in the description of this video, and you can get it there. If you're a bar, I believe we're in 39 states right now, and soon we'll be in all 50. So go check that out right now. Our Patreon, make sure you subscribe if you're interested in getting content early, bonus content, all that good stuff. The link to that is in the description of this video as well. And if you're new here, welcome. We have a channel full of amazing content, so make sure you go check out the previous content and subscribe. If you are one of our returning listeners or viewers, we love you. Make sure you like this video. As always, comment below. We love the comments, good, bad, ugly. We love looking at them. We love the engagement. Everybody has an opinion, so might as well share it on our video. We're open. We're open to it. We've seen some crazy ones over the years, crazy horrible ones, crazy good ones, lots of love, some hate, and that's just part of it. But
love the haters.
We love it, and so that's why we're here. So, anyways, today we're gonna talk about Meyer Lansky, the mob's accountant. I'll let you take away because I know you've been wanting to do this episode for a little while since Meyer Lansky is somebody that
Well, because he's an extraordinary guy that never really got caught for anything, like little things. I mean, never went to jail. He was born in the early 1900s. I used to hear a lot about him because he lived down in the Lower East Side where my father grew up. Vito Genovese was down there. So I heard these stories as a kid from my father, from the neighborhood. And, they were about 20, 25 years older than my father, but they were running around and they were known in those areas like to be extraordinary gangsters. So they're like the elite of gangsters over the years. And what Lansky did was incredible. He developed the national syndicate that everybody, him and Lucky Luciano, Bugsy Siegel, these guys, Vito Genovese. He had Joe Adonis. I mean, the guys that they had together that cultivated the mafia back in those days are incredible. It's some lineup.
well, so first he was from the Jewish mob.
Well, let me just cut you off. He was from the Jewish mob, and he met Lucky Luciano on the street.
Right.
When Lucky tried to shake him down, and he was, Lucky was really abusing him, and Lucky liked him because he wouldn't back down. He just kept talking, and Lucky wanted to hurt him, and he didn't, and nothing intimidated him. So he says, "Wait a second, I could get friendly with this guy and make more money." These are kids at the time. He said, "I could make money with him as a kid instead of being his enemy." It shows you the intelligence of both guys.
So, I guess first for like a very, very beginner level viewer, talk about the differences when you're in the Jewish mob, Italian mob, mainly.
Back in those days, Lucky Luciano thought different than the Mustache Pete's from Italy, which they didn't want to expand the mafia to other ethnic groups. Lucky wanted to expand to the Irish Jewish mob and give everybody the respect of what I always say. If you're a gangster or you're a tough guy, you're a gangster, you're a tough guy. It shouldn't matter how they try to use this ethnic stuff as saying, well, he's more of a man than this guy because he's Italian. And Lucky Luciano didn't look at things like that. He looked at intelligence and the ability to make money and also be a tough guy. And when he joined forces with the Irish and with the Jews, he learned something that these other guys could do. They can band together and make the national syndicate, which they did do.
So, I think what's, when I was looking, and I have some questions here as well and topics we want to touch on. I think what's very impressive is Meyer Lansky is your glasses and your cardigan.
Thank you.
You look like a straight zebra with the cardigan, but is how he owned points really in some of these big casinos, which is rare, I think, for mobsters.
He had points in the Havana casinos, which he made deals with Batista. For the people who don't know, he was before Castro before they overthrow Batista. But he cut deals with Batista in hotels. He did the same in London. He did the same in Vegas, the Flamingo Inn. So he was smart enough at the most intelligent at most. And one of the most intelligent things he did was he didn't want to end up like Al Capone in a tax problem. So he brought his money to the Swiss bank accounts, where back in those days it's not the same anymore. You could hide your money, and it was anonymity of what you're doing and how you're doing it. So he was smart. Every which way, he was just an intelligent gangster.
And like one of the things that's written here about him is really his influence in the consolidation of the criminal underworld is literally verbatim what this article says. I think it's very interesting, like how he saw an opportunity, and I think a little bit even earlier on than your days, right? To like see how everybody could work together in a lot of ways.
Well, he had the intelligence of being a Jew, and he had honestly, very intelligent people, I believe, in my opinion. And when you get some guys that are tough and intelligent enough to bring guys like Bugsy Siegel with him, he had a slew of Jewish friends that were incredibly like Bugsy Siegel. Was one of the toughest, and if you read about him, and anybody reads about Bugsy Siegel, it's easy to be a shooter when it's only you shooting at somebody, right? I mean, not so easy for everybody, but for the most part. But Bugsy Siegel had a reputation to jump into anything. If there was 5 guns against him, he'd jump in. If there was 10 guys, he'd fight. It didn't matter. He was very protective over his personal friends. And he had such a friendship with Lansky and later on with Lucky Luciano. And so these guys were really intelligent enough. And what Lucky Luciano also did, besides the casinos, he developed the sports business and gambling business, not just locally, worldwide.
Yep.
Think about that. And I'm always talking about guys that think out of the box, because I was a traveler. And if you go from country to country, state to state, the way he did, and he developed something that was highly ahead of its time. You're talking about he was the Las Vegas in his mind in the gambling business before Las Vegas existed. Mm-hmm. So guys like him is really what developed this, and also in the liquor business, these guys were.
It's funny because through his 50 years of, illegal behavior, if you will, the only thing he ever was caught with was a little bit of illegal gambling. And that's like, I think that's rare to be in organized crime for 50 years, and that's the only
he learned
tiny
also,
charge you got.
Lansky learned to make alliances with politicians.
Right.
Think about it, with the president, dictator, whatever you want to call him, from Cuba, Batista, to have the understanding, the knowledge to go and make an alliance like that. He later on makes an alliance with the naval intelligence to save Lucky Luciano's life. Think about how high, where he's going. He also had, I believe the judge's name was Perlman, that asked him at the time to put down the movement of the Nazi movement in the United States.
Yep.
So they hired him, and he said, "I'm not taking money for this. I'm doing this for my brothers." And Lucky, and he had the ability to move the Italian mob in with him, like Lucky Luciano and Vito Genovese, to help him and to squash things like this. So he went from being an intelligent businessman to being a feared gangster to being a guy that, stayed with politicians and presidents of countries. Mm-hmm. This guy was just an incredible thinker outside of the box, where he understood the alliances around the world, what was really important.
And to your point, and I'm just reading straight from the article here, is, and this you don't see with really any other mob affiliates ever, is it says during World War II, Lansky was also instrumental in helping the Office of Naval Intelligence, right, ONI, Operation Underworld, in which the government recruited criminals to watch out for German infiltrators and submarine-borne saboteurs, right, which basically also...
they were sinking ships.
Well, and two, it says here, in the 1930s, Lansky and his gang stepped up outside their usual criminal activities to break up rallies held up by pro-Nazi German-American Bund. So, he was very... it's interesting, right? And it is very loyal to his people and very getting involved in political and world affairs, especially during World War II, which, again, is to that level I don't think you really see from a lot of
Well,
mobsters.
you hear like I'm very, patriotic to Albania, to America, and I'm going to say something off this real quick. So there's people that know that in the Muslim world, we did a show on the Duca brothers
Yep.
that were convicted of terrorist attacks or planned terrorist attacks against Fort Dix that I said they're innocent on. And I got a lot of people that attacked me saying, oh, because they're Muslim and you're Albanian and your parents are Muslim and you came from a Muslim family. It has nothing to do with it. They were innocent. They never hurt anybody. They didn't have no overt acts. I believe they're innocent on that case that Chris Christie brought to get himself elected as governor. I think it was a bogus case. I don't speak highly of Chris Christie. So when people are telling me I take one side or another, I'm very fair the way I talk. It doesn't matter they're Albanian. It doesn't matter they're Muslim. They're good, loving Muslims that never hurt anybody.
Yep.
And now with the conflicts going on here with Israel and Palestine, I'm against Hamas, and people know I'm openly against them because of the killing against 1,400 innocent civilians. But I say, as an ex-gangster and a guy that talks about this stuff, gangsters overall are very patriotic.
Yep.
All gangsters, even the ones that are now. We don't go against our country. The problem I have with our government, they go against our country. So when you talk about Lansky and different people like Lansky back in Lucky Luciano, they really were patriotic towards this country. So they didn't do it as, it wasn't, usually as an angle. Where's the angle? They didn't want money. And the only angle they had with that was to save Lucky Luciano's sentence, to get him back, extradited back into Italy without any charges and free him. And for the people that don't know, when they start doing business in Cuba, Lucky Luciano gets himself to Cuba for one of the biggest meetings ever of the mob. And I got to dig that and read some names, but that was almost like the commission meetings of the Appalachian, but in Cuba. And I'm going to dig that out when you go on to your next segment.
Well, too, this I also think is very, when you talk about kind of his loyalty, especially to Judaism and being Jewish, is one of the judges, a guy named Nathan Perlman.
Yeah, Perlman, yeah.
Who was an American lawyer and politician, had offered to pay Lansky for his services in the protection of Jews at the time, specifically, when Hitler was, trying to completely exterminate them. And Lansky said, I'm a Jew and I feel for the Jews in Europe who are suffering. They're my brothers. And I think he declined getting any payment for his protection of his people.
This is why I say, if you are true to your heart, and there's so many protesters out on the street that don't understand what's going on, and I get so many people that attack me since I started speaking about outside of what we usually talk about, like right now we're talking about Lansky. I brought up, because people can't stay silent during this, I brought up, where is all these Muslim protesters when China has 10, 11 million, mostly Muslims, in concentration camps, re-education camps? They're killing them, torturing them, they're sterilizing them, they're separating their family. There's nobody out speaking, there's nobody protesting about what's going on in China. So where the fuck are all you people to talk about saving these Muslims that didn't do anything wrong that are being treated? Where is everybody? Last year, when the Iranian government was destroying and killing and jailing and beating families and kids that wanted freedom, I don't know where anybody was. Where is everybody for the Duca brothers? These are all people that haven't hurt anybody, nothing. And the Duca brothers need people to protest and sign petitions for them. Where are all the good Muslims? But now you have people on the street where 1,400 people were butchered and killed that are out on the street. And again, I'm going to say, that's not the Palestinian people. And I do not want to see any Palestinian kids or families get hurt either in some of these bombings in retaliation for what Hamas did. But Hamas knows what they did. They knew there'd be a retaliation of such a atrocities and savage killings of children. And that does not stop me from saying the same. I don't want to see any, because we have so many Palestinian people that are good people and friends, but they're not Hamas. Hamas is a terrorist group. I don't care who says anything different. There's no man or no good Muslim is okay with women being raped or killed, babies being killed, and any of the naive people that don't know what happened and stop saying that they weren't killed. There's 1,400 names and bodies that I can give you a list of if you don't. You're not educated enough. But where are you for the Duca brothers? I want to know where you are. Where are you? Right now when we're talking, they're torturing them in China. Where are you? That's what I want to ask. And I'll go back to the mob stuff now. But Lansky and these guys were loyalists. There's the difference. Loyalists to this country, loyalists to their world that they believed in, the mafia, and loyal as far as when to make money and not to make money off of certain things. It's your character. And he had Lansky, as being a gangster, people think I'm nuts for saying this, but he had a good character. And he learned to be loyal to his friends, and that's why Batista liked him. He cut all kinds of deals with him in Cuba, and later on, he was behind Bugsy Siegel bringing in the casinos in Vegas.
So speaking of also, this before we talk about more of the casinos in Vegas, it says after World War II, as a reward for his wartime service, Luciano's pandering sentence was commuted time to time served. Because remember, Luciano went to Cuba, I believe, for a little bit of time before he went to Sicily. And then Luciano also ran a number of casinos in Cuba with the sanction of a Cuban dictator, Fulgencio Batista. Upon discovering Luciano's presence in Cuba and resumption of criminal activity, the U.S. government pressured the Batista regime into deporting Lucky Luciano to Italy. Batista and Lansky formed a renowned friendship and business relationship that lasted for a decade. During a stay in the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York in the late 1940s, it was mutually agreed upon that in exchange for kickbacks, Batista would offer Lansky and the mafia control of the country's casinos and racetracks. Batista would open Havana to large-scale gambling, and his government would match dollar for dollar any hotel investment over $1 million. Which would include a casino license. Lansky would place himself at the center of Cuba's gambling operations. He immediately called on his associates to hold a summit in Havana. So, this is, high level.
I lived in these areas. I lived in Cuba, for the people who don't know. I went in and out of Cuba for about 6 months. I lived in the Cayman Islands when I was on a run. I went to Cuba. So I went to these locations.
Yeah.
I have friends of mine that lived there that took me to different where these casinos were. I know all of Havana. I lived in Havana, downtown in Havana for a while. And then I lived in Miramar by the aquarium on the beach. It was beautiful. I lived in a big, not on the beach, but by the water. But I lived on a mansion, an old Victorian, with a political family that helped me there and kept me there. So I want to shout out to them. But the rest of the situation in Cuba, and here's the list. It was incredible when they had the meeting, and I just dug it up. Is they had the Hotel National. It was a first-scale meeting of American underworld leaders from Chicago in 1932. Such figures, Joe Adonis was there, Albert Anastasia, Frank Costello, Joe Bananos, Vito Genovese, Mo DeLitz, Tommy Lucchese, Trafficani Jr., who I know the family, those pictures we put out, and I was involved in, actually the cousins of them testified against me, Jason and John Accardi. I spoke about that before. Stefano Mengandino, the Buffalinos. You can go on and on. Trigger, you had Charlie Rocco. You had a ton. It was an incredible amount of people. And Phil Costello was their dandy. So that the incredible intelligence to bring the mob to Cuba, just like they did to Vegas and other things, to join in to make billions of dollars. And, for the people that don't know, when Lansky he died of lung cancer naturally in Miami. He was worth about $226 million, they said. They never found a dollar of his money, but he moved his money around the world. He was a little more intelligent. His one last thing, his wife remarried a guy that wrote 9 books.
So then I think also a very interesting moment is, and I'll read it because I think it's a little long, but it kind of shows the scale of it, is after his relationship with Batista and Lansky, which would basically put him in the center of all casino operations, literally in the world, or at least in this world. he held a summit in Havana, and the Havana Conference was held on December 22nd, 1946 at the Hotel Nacional. This was the first full-scale meeting of American underworld leaders since the Chicago meeting 14 years prior in 1932.
That's all the names I just read out. It's incredible what they did.
It's insane. I mean, that's like, and that's rare because even during your time, you rarely had, I mean, maybe if never, like all the top people together.
Well, that's why I said the pull that Lansky had around with the bosses, because later on, Lucky Luciano, Vito Genovese, they kill Masseria because they go with Maranzano. Lucky Luciano gets a second seat behind Maranzano to run that family by trading, going against Masseria. When they do that, Lansky's the brains behind this stuff. He's the one that's telling these guys how to maneuver, and these guys are, an incredible close team of guys that were incredibly violent and smart. So when they're slowly taking over the control of the complete control of the mob at that time.
Where do you think Meyer Lansky ranked at that point in time in terms of power in the criminal world, in the organized crime world?
As people would say, he was the background godfather of the mob world. How much control he really had. Well, obviously, he was like a brother to Lucky Luciano, and to Vito Genovese. These guys were incredibly close, and they bring in. He's the one that started Murder Inc., and him, Bugsy Siegel, Lepke. These guys actually. I've talked about this before. For the people who don't know. Mm-hmm. Albert Anastasia gives up Lepke. He turns him into the FBI to stop the control. That was one of the first. He was actually a rat. I mean, guys don't want to call him that. That's what he was. He brought his guy in to get the death sentence when they couldn't find him. And they told him, don't worry, we negotiated a deal, and they walked him in. So this is the real world of the mob. Mm-hmm. And Lansky wasn't happy about it at all. He wasn't happy about that. And he fought for the life of Bugsy Siegel. What people don't know, that they couldn't get the casino open, the Flamingo open properly. And
they lost a lot of money.
And he was running around. He was married, and he was running around with Virginia Hill, Bugsy. And people don't know his real name is Benjamin Siegel. So when he's running around with her, they're losing money, and they accuse Virginia Hill of stealing money. They don't actually accuse him. And they snipe at him. They were so afraid of him. He was in a house in California when they sniped Bugsy. They were afraid to get him a different way, and did Meyer Lansky know that he was going to be hit? There's different things that he was definitely knew about it, was involved, and Lucky Luciano, they were trying to save him. He got several warnings. He didn't listen, and eventually they kill him. And the casino didn't do well at that time. Later on, it flourishes. But it opened in a major rainstorm on his behalf too. When it opened, there was nothing in Vegas at that time. He's the first, but the mindset was incredible to open it. And the biggest thing about that was when later on, when it's successful, they really understand that his foresight was incredible.
What's also interesting is for that Havana conference, it says the first to arrive was actually Lucky Luciano, who had traveled to Havana with a false passport. Lansky shared with the attendees of his vision of a new Havana, profitable for those willing to invest the right sum of money. According to Luciano, the only attendee who ever recounted the events in any detail, he was appointed as kingpin for the mob to rule from Cuba until such time as he could find a legitimate way back into the U.S. Into the U.S. Entertainment at the conference was provided by, among others, Frank Sinatra, who flew to Cuba with his friends.
Frank Sinatra was with the Fisher brothers.
The Fischetti, yeah.
Yeah, Fischetti. I did a show on them, the Fischetti brothers. So people ask, where did Frank Sinatra come from? Because that's his contact, and that's what brought him into this, elevated him.
How deep was Frank Sinatra entangled with the mob?
Oh, very deep. All through the years.
When did he die?
He died, it's a while now, 15 years ago, something like that.
Did you ever, you interact with him?
No, we were at his concerts before. And actually, there's a story about when he didn't want to come out, John Gotti went to with his youngest son, went to see him and asked to see him, and he kind of was, whatever word he gave it, Joe Watts supposedly monkeyed him up a little bit, slapped him, pulled him around. How true that is or what really happened, I don't know. But that was the rumor around us, was that he slapped him and pushed him around. Who knows if he really slapped him, but he grabbed him for sure and told him, you go out there and you go pay your respect to John, which he ends up doing. But,
In what ways was Sinatra entangled? Was he gambling? Was he, what was he
No,
doing?
before you had the jockeys that were with DJs that were playing, and it was pay for a place scam. So if you have the pull, they would tell them play those songs, and they made everybody across the country play those songs of Frank Sinatra. So, and that was through the mob, and really that elevated him. And he had when they have Johnny Fontaine in The Godfather, that actually supposed to be really Frank Sinatra, who that Johnny Fontaine is playing.
Was Frank Sinatra, did he have any like specific ties with one family over the others, or did he?
Well, he grew up in Hoboken originally,
right,
and then he had connections to the Chicago outfit. So he was entangled completely through the mob. He had friends between the Shetty brothers, Chicago, his ties in Hoboken. He had obviously, and there was a lot of threats to Frank at the beginning of his career.
Right.
So his life was saved because of his connections of these guys.
So one other part I wanted to read was in 1952, Lansky offered then President Carlos Socadas a bribe of $250,000 to step down so Batista could return to power. Once Batista retook control of the government in a military coup, he quickly put gambling back on track. Batista offered Lansky an annual salary of $25,000 to serve as an unofficial gambling minister.
But he gave a lot to Batista's brother-in-law. I believe it was a general, too. And his brother-in-law had all the machine businesses, the coin machine business.
Right.
Brother-in-law had a couple other business I don't remember.
Well, so yeah, exactly. So the government would get $250,000 for a license plus a percentage of the profits from each casino. Cuba's 10,000 slot machines, even the ones that dispense small prizes for children at country fairs, were to be the province of Batista's brother-in-law, Roberto Fernandez y Miranda, brother of his wife. So it basically...
But he owned something else besides that. Does it say after that they gave him something else?
Skimming this article. Not sure.
Okay. He owns other things besides the slot machines.
Probably. I imagine a lot more.
They gave him a lot of little things that he can earn off of.
Well,
Batista was good to his brother.
And it's funny, too, because it says that the rise of Fidel Castro changed things for Lansky.
When he came in, he kicked it out. He made it government-owned. Again, I was in Cuba for 6 months. And I was at rallies where Castro spoke at. I was in a gym where it's a private gym where his son, and I didn't know it was his son, and a guy I was with, Gaitone, he looked at me and he kept rubbing his chin. I didn't know what he was talking about at the time. I don't know what I was thinking because his son looks just like Castro. And actually, he was a nice guy to me. He would have told me to get the fuck out of his way. He didn't do that. And he had a couple guys with him, obviously, his whatever personal we call Secret Service. It was his own security. And as much as that regime, I didn't care for that regime the way they treated the people, because the Cuban people are great, very friendly, family-oriented. I mean, they're really good people. They're very kind. And these guys, but Castro's son was nice to me. He didn't say to me, get out of my way, I'm going next. He just said, do you mind if I go? And I said, okay, go ahead.
This was big, too. Listen, because on New Year's Eve 1958, while Batista was preparing to flee the Dominican Republic, Lansky was celebrating the $3 million he made in the first year of operations. And this is $3 million in 1958. At his 440-room, $8 million palace, the Havana Riviera. Many of the casinos, including several of Lansky's, were looted and destroyed that night.
Yeah. Well, if you still go to Cuba, for the people that fly over, but you have the old style, like Copacabana, and they have the big band shows and the dances and the flamingo girls. They have that still in Cuba. It's amazing, because they don't have to pay a lot of money. You can't get away with it here anymore because of the cost. But there, they put the shows on constantly. I used to go to them all the time.
And Yeah, I mean, it basically was Fidel Castro that fucked everything up for him because he outlawed. Castro nationalized all the island's hotel casinos and outlawed gambling. So
Well, fucked it up for them, but not for Castro. He was
Right.
bringing all kinds
Oh
of
my
money.
God, yeah.
He said, "Why would I need to share with these guys?"
exactly.
Which Batista stayed loyal to them for whatever reason. But Batista used to frink with here, like at the hotel. So he had a different mindset also.
Did you hear about his the blackmail with J. Edgar Hoover, the FBI director at the time?
Yeah, they had a lot of blackmail on Hoover,
Which
and
is
his whatever.
crazy. Like Lansky, honestly, it sounds like he was an absolute didn't give a fuck.
No, he was a genius. He played at a different level.
It's a
than
different
most of the guys.
operating level mentally.
And he understood violence was necessary at certain times, but he also understood the intelligence of how he maneuvered was more important.
Yep.
And the alliances, like I said, that he made with judges and presidents and congressmen and senators were incredible. And for him never to go to jail, I mean, he got charged with little stupid things.
Illegal gambling is the worst thing.
Yeah, nothing, but it wasn't nothing anyway.
Was he violent at all?
Fine. Lansky, I mean, everybody around him was violent.
Yeah.
And how much he did himself, I don't really know. They don't talk about that he ever did anything much himself. But he was the chess master. So this guy was just an incredible individual that understood the ability to move around the world as a gangster, not as a local gangster.
So then in 1970, Lansky fled to Israel to escape federal tax evasion charges in the United States. At the time, Israeli law did not permit the extradition of Jews, and under the law of return, any Jew may legally settle in the state of Israel. The Israeli government reserved discretion to exclude Jews with a criminal past from permanently settling in the country. 2 years after his arrival, Lansky was deported back to the U.S. The federal government brought Lansky to trial with the testimony of loan shark Fat Vinny. You know Fat Vinny? And then Lansky was acquitted in 1974. So,
because the fix was in by then. That's why they brought him back.
Do you know how he died?
Lung cancer. He died at, I think, 83 years old. Am I right?
1983, aged 80. He was 80. He was born in 1903, so he died in 1983, and he was 80 years old. And he was, so this I think is the most interesting part, is that
they didn't find his money.
Well, at the time, on paper, Lansky was worth almost nothing. At the time, the FBI believed he left behind over $300 million in 1983 in hidden bank accounts, but they never found any money.
Yeah.
This would be equivalent to $696 million in 2021.
Well, like he moved his money. Everybody knows he moved it into Swiss accounts. And
So
he had money in Cuba too, by the way, when the fall of Cuba. Besides that $3 million, he had money there, so they grabbed that.
And I'm French. Like, I know a lot of like the European organized crime, and like a lot of people even from the United States. Like Switzerland was the place. Now it's a little bit more complicated, I believe. But still, to not find 300.
I'm in Switzerland a lot, and the Cayman Islands. I used to drop money, and I lived in the Cayman Islands. But those.
So where do you think he hid all the money other than Switzerland and Cuba?
Under his mattress. His wife got his ex-wife. His ex-wife gets married to a writer. I don't remember his name, but he wrote about 8 or 9 books.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So it looks like self-published for sure.
Yeah.
Wash the money in the pages.
But who knows what he did with the money?
But 300 is a lot to. I mean, let me read the second part to that. His second wife's granddaughter told the author T.J. English that at the time of his death in 1983, Lansky left only $57,000 in cash, equivalent to $132,000 in 2021 terms. When asked in later years what went wrong in Cuba, the gangster offered no excuses. I crapped out. He said Lansky told people that he had almost lost every penny in Cuba and that he was barely scraping by. But okay, so
because he was smart enough to. This is the intelligence.
Yeah, but John, $300 million, that's a lot. Like, how do you...
Well, think about the money he was making from the illegal sales of liquor in those days all around the country. He controlled it. They controlled it, not just him. But Lucky Luciano, Vito Genovese, Joe Adonis, Bugsy Siegel. Then they went into the gambling business. And then from the gambling business, they went into casino business. This guy's brought. You couldn't spend that kind of money anywhere. He didn't have a lot of bad habits. So where is this money? Of course, he didn't have $57,000 only. Of course, he had those millions, but he moved it around the country. He moved it from Swiss accounts to other accounts, and who ended up with it? His family, obviously.
So this is the part that I think is the most interesting that I highlighted. Is a journalist for the Miami Herald. So Lansky ended up dying in Miami. But this guy named Hank Messick, a journalist for the Miami Herald who had spent years investigating Lansky, said that the key to understanding Lansky lay with the people around him. Meyer Lansky doesn't own property, he owns people. To him, the FBI and Manhattan District Attorney Robert Morgenthau, the reality was that Lansky had kept large sums of money in other people's names for decades and that keeping very little in his own was nothing new to him. So, I think he basically, and the Manhattan District Attorney, DA, agrees, is he probably had 20, 30 guys. He had money in their names. He probably gave him a little cut. But I think Meyer Lansky operated at such a level that he knew that one day that he was going to get investigated and people were going to be on his ass. And so he never had anything really to his name, which I think is... Well, he was thinking 20, 30 years before this, which I think is very telling of his ability to have a foresight of what's going to happen.
So I'm going to tell you something. There's certain guys, and I couldn't remember his name, but now I got it. James Florio was the governor of New Jersey at one time. His limo driver became a multi-millionaire.
Shocker.
So, shocker. He was a fighter also, Florio. So when highly intelligent people make people around them that they believe are very loyal, whether it's family or good friends, very rich in their name.
Yeah.
And so there's no difference then, and I'm going to, again, talk about politicians to gangsters, because there's a very connected situation. Actually, the politicians are bigger gangsters. I keep saying it, and as the public is starting to see with the inside trading and different things, they're making billions of dollars, not even millions in some of the things they do. Exactly for all these deaths in these wars, they're making tons of money. So it's not as cut and dry as people think. It's about money. At the end of the day, follow the oil, follow the minerals. When you're talking about, and by the way, again, the Duca brothers, so you guys know that the Muslims out there that want to sign petitions, get in touch with his brother, Burham. And these guys got life sentences. Never hurt a hair on anybody, and they got life sentences. Here's where some of the good Muslims should be talking about and trying to help them, support them, get a new trial. These guys were in ADX and everything. But to go back to gangsters and politicians, these politicians are making billions of dollars off of certain things they're doing. Like they're talking about the Green Deal. But the Green Deal, for people who don't understand the energy deal, gives China the control of us. So you just understand, 70% of those minerals come through China. You cannot let your enemy control this country, just like the mob does it.
So real quick, back to Lansky. In 2010, Lansky's daughter, Sandra, publicly stated that her father had transferred some $15 million to his brother's account sometime in the early 1970s when Lansky was having problems with the IRS. How much money Lansky was really worth will probably never be known. Since the warming of relations between the United States and Cuba in 2015, Lansky's grandson, Gary Rappaport, has been asking the Cuban government to compensate him for the confiscation of the Riviera Hotel that his grandfather built in Havana.
Good luck to that.
That's imagine 40 years later trying to get money.
You can see Castro's whole family laying in the presidential suites laughing at that if they read that and say, "All right, you can try that in another country as not a dictatorship."
I mean, I think over the past couple years we've obviously dissected a lot of the top mobsters and figures in organized crime and how they operate, and I personally have to say, I think Meyer Lansky was far and away the smartest I've ever, at least from reading and understanding from what you've described and your knowledge. Like, I think he's arguably the smartest mobster there ever was.
Incredibly intelligent. There's no, it's using force when you have to go through a door or just going around and cutting a hole in the wall. He would cut the hole in the wall. He's just smart enough that he just knew when to kill. And listen, he was dangerous. Don't get me wrong. He had some serious killers with him.
And I think there's a couple things, right? When we say smart, we're not here to put him on a pedestal.
Yeah,
this is no, but this isn't in relation to the others
this
that
world,
exist.
For the underworld. Right. I'm talking about
exactly
compared to most gangsters. This guy was 10 steps ahead.
And I think too, though, I'm sure there was a lot of violence, but it didn't seem like he was on a DeMeo level where it was just disgustingly ruthless, nonstop
he
killing.
Didn't speak like this. He had, I forget the guy's name, that used to drive Jimmy Hoffa around. I put him on a show with me.
Oh, yeah,
you
what's
remember
his
when
name?
I did that show? Was it Rosen? I forget his last name, but he was on the show with me for the people that didn't see it. And he's an ex-pro fighter. He used to drive Jimmy Hoffa around, and he talked about how Jimmy Hoffa would abuse him a lot.
Marvin the Weasel Elkind?
No.
Another guy?
And Vito Genovese, he said, treated him like a grandpop, very nice. And he says, and Meyer Lansky was incredibly nice to him.
Yeah, it sounded like he understood where I think the mob was sometimes really did themselves a disservice was just how brutally gruesome a lot of the things were. Instead of using people as allies and speaking to them, they just went and killed them. I think Meyer Lansky took a different approach where he said, I'm not going to make crazy waves, at least personally. I'm not going to be as flamboyant as Gotti was. I'm not going to be as ruthless as Roy DeMeo was, or at least not me directly. And I'm going to go about just straight business. And how could the people around us all make money? Because when all the people around us make money, I'll make money. And then what?
Yeah, but he did kill. They killed viciously, that whole crew. But he did it in an intelligent way, if there's a way for me to say that. When it was very necessary and they couldn't get around that door, then they would kill.
Right.
But he did it only in a business sense for a money grab.
Well, he did it.
He knew when to do it. He didn't just do it.
Well, the fact that he never is linked to a single, at least he's never got charged, nothing. I've never seen a criminal record for a criminal that blank.
Well, because he had guys like Luciano to actually in front of him that were running that, or Vito Genovese or Bugsy Siegel. He had the access to these guys. But at the same time, he's saving a guy like Luciano. Right. Saved his life.
Right.
So these guys know that he's not the typical guy where he's expendable. They need him around. And the reason why he got nicknamed the accountant in the mob world is because he was so intelligent. He made people, when you make people money, until today, anybody that, there's a guy that could be a friend and he in the mob world, and if he's dangerous and he's hurt, if he's not making you money, he can go.
Yep.
But when a guy's making you a ton of money, that's when everybody says, don't touch that guy. I don't care what you do, don't go near him, because that's their golden egg. And when you touch somebody's golden egg, that's when they'll kill everybody for it.
Is there, well, no, so I guess Meyer Lansky, he died in 1983, so he was never really super involved with the people you were a little maybe.
A little bit. He had a little, he was involved with Trafficani, and they were going back and forth to Trafficani. So that's where they all got big in Tampa in the cigar business. You have that little Cuban area in downtown Ybor City. Cigar City Mafia magazine, they did a layout on me on that. They also did a layout on Trafficani and Scaglione, and those guys were all made guys. And Scaglione's grandson was my partner in the parking business. Actually, I don't talk to him now, but he was also running my company. Went to jail for a couple of years, not much. And these were all guys that were running the Tampa organization.
Is there any other stories that we didn't bring up from Lansky or anybody that you knew that spoke to Lansky that people could be interested by?
Just the show I did. I don't know how you can find it. We got to find it. Maybe put it out again with Jimmy Hoffa's driver that speaks about Lansky personally. Guy was 90-something years old. He's on his deathbed. And I did it by Zoom, and I had his daughter on also, and a friend of his that were also jumping in because he couldn't hear some of it, and the audible of it, him not being able to talk well. But it was really interesting because this is firsthand information from a pro fighter who started off at 17 years old as a driver around, Lansky and Vito Genovese. It was incredible. Okay, Jimmy Hoffa, but Vito Genovese and Lansky was incredible. And my uncle was going to get killed by Vito Genovese because he slapped his sister. Didn't know who he was. He ran off to Detroit and ended up marrying one of the bosses of Detroit's daughter. And they worked it out where he wasn't allowed in New York anymore. And Vito let him off the hook.
Do you know any other mobsters that had a lot of money like Meyer Lansky that hit it as well as he did?
I mean, there's a ton of guys that hit it. I mean, guys like Gotti never hit it because he spent it. So right. He actually saved a couple million that was put away too. It's not like he was penniless. But most of these guys think for today. They don't think for tomorrow. And there's not most, but a lot of guys.
Do you know how tall Meyer Lansky was?
He's very small.
How tall?
5'2" or something like that.
5 foot.
Yeah, he was very small.
That's insane.
Yeah,
that is very, very small.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, it's that short guy syndrome, too, like Napoleon.
But he didn't have the Napoleon syndrome. He was very soft-spoken.
But it's funny that they call him the mob's accountant because, like, he probably manipulated numbers like it was nobody's business.
Yeah. Did
you have a guy that, well, not on obviously on the same level, but, like, was super good with numbers for you guys that would,
Yeah, me. They used to call me the computer. The government nicknamed me that because I knew numbers. I was going to school, be an accountant. I just go with numbers. I got a good memory. Look what happened. I was also
plot twist. You were not an accountant.
I was also going for criminology. I got straight A's. I really was. I just went the wrong way with it.
Yeah, it's funny. The mob
should have gotten to politics.
Should have. Hey, never too late.
Yeah.
I've never honestly politics is so interesting.
I mean,
like
Val Sharpton can do it, and he's a fucking gangster. I want to say hello to everybody south side of Chicago, by the way, and my friend Reese. And thank you for the inspiration, for the faith-driven stuff you send me. I look at it every morning. I appreciate it. And welcome home, brother.
We can end there. I just want to see any last... It's so crazy. I'm just reading from mobmuseum.org where it's that part again about how the feds thought that he had over $300 million, but they only found.
I think it was actually the quote. I don't know what that says, but I think it's $266 million. I know I've seen it somewhere, but it doesn't matter.
But think about it.
300, 300.
But he died with. 50,
he died filthy rich.
No, I know, but like on his accounts.
Yeah.
It's almost like it really feels like he was running circles around the feds, around everybody. Like nobody could figure him out.
No.
And I think that's why, in a lot of ways, he's like a legend in people's eyes.
Yeah. Hey, so watch some of the old episodes are out. We got a Roy DeMeo one out. We have a new one and a completely new outlook and something different than anybody about John Gotti Sr. and some other talks we have about Joey Scopo, who's a lot of respect for him over the years.
As John just said, we have lots of content banked up. You can if you just want to listen and you're in the car, you're at work, you don't have time to go on YouTube, no problem. Apple, Spotify. But if you're here right now, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We love the comments. So good, bad, ugly. Hit the comments. Tell us what you think about this episode. Tell us what you want in the future. Respond to people in the comments. The engagement's really what we're here for. And the glasses.
And my glasses. Both of these style. This one.
I know everybody always talks shit about glasses.
It's my style glasses. So, you guys want any glasses? Let me know. I can get them for you. These are French. Yeah.
What brand?
Boucheria.
Oh, yeah. All right. Thanks, guys.